Ed here with the Digital Digest, and today I wanted to share a quick update on my experience with the Samsung Galaxy Z Fold 2. This 5G handset launched on September 18th, 2020, $2,000 US for this second generation Fold, and I will tell you right now, it is everything that I had hoped for, and it is going to be my daily driver. I can tell you that already. Everything is on point. The improvements they made, specifically the actual flex hinge, which now is the same as what we have with the Z Flip that I have right here. I'll do a little shot like that. Is fantastic, and it is a big difference. You may not think so, but if you ever put your hands on the first gen Fold, you would know that that original hinge was fine, but once the Flip launched and we saw that flex mode was a thing, there was no going back. So that's, in my opinion, one of the biggest improvements. The other two are obvious. The front screen now being nearly a 90% screen to body ratio, as opposed to the original display, which was like 4.5 inches. This one's 6.25. Big difference. And then, of course, the internal display becoming larger and cleaner, because we now just have that single selfie camera with the punch hole, because Samsung realized from experience with Gen 1 that we could actually use the cameras on the back as our selfie cameras, now using this display. So you didn't need the additional cameras in that notch cutout that Gen 1 had. And then the other thing, of course, is the 120 hertz capability that this phone has, much like the Note 20 Ultra. So overall, I'm really happy with this device. That's why, as I said, I can tell you right now, unless something crazy happens, this is going to be my daily driver. It's been a long time since I've been as excited about a device as I am with this. You know, the first gen was incredibly cool, but like everyone else out there, even though I gave it the props it deserved, I also acknowledged the issues it had. And if you followed my coverage, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But this phone, I mean, they hit it out of the park. So while it is really expensive and clearly not for everyone, it's just phenomenal to be able to use this in this capacity as a traditional candy bar. And then when I want the tablet experience, I've got it in my pocket. Now, I'm not going anywhere with the pandemic in full swing, but even around the house, it's fantastic. Now, with that said, it's not all perfect, of course. The case I'm using right now, the leather case, which was the only one in stock at time of launch, at $80 US is ridiculous. And you know, I don't hate it, but I'm not a huge fan of the fact that we only have one side protection. It's certainly better than nothing. I'm waiting on the Samsung official Kevlar, or not Kevlar, but the Aramid fiber with the kickstand, which I think is going to be incredibly cool to be able to just, you know, throw it up like this and have it sit on its own. That is really the reason to buy that case. And yeah, there are a lot of other nice cases on the way, but they're all slated for October. But overall, this thing has just been a joy. The cameras, I do wish that we had gotten what's in the Note 20, not because I need it, but because this is the most expensive flagship phone on earth. And I think it's warranted to give us the best cameras. But clearly, what we got with the three 12-megapixel cameras, no 8K video, you know, 10 megapixel selfie here, 10 megapixel selfie there, is Samsung acknowledging that in order to make the improvements that they did with the larger, the 7.6-inch 120 hertz display here, and then also giving us the massive improvement on the front of the device, it meant they had to cut some corners. And unfortunately, those corners were, I feel like, in the camera department. So the good news is the cameras are all very good. You're essentially getting, you know, the S20, Note 20, non-ultra performance. As I said, no 8K video, no 108 or 64 megapixel sensor, but still really good performance overall. Certainly much better than something like this turd burger. So keep that in mind. But beyond that, it's just, you know, overall, to cut those corners isn't the killer. To me, the storage is a bigger issue. 256 gigs is the only capacity. No storage expansion. In this case, I wish they had given us, you know, an expansion option, because the first gen was 512, but that was the other cost-cutting measure. But otherwise, you know, I already knew we weren't going to have an IP68 rating. I already knew that we were not going to have pen input. And I have to say, in spite of those things being missing, I love this thing. It's fantastic. The future is in your hands. This is going to be a standard going forward. I know there are a lot of people that don't like the crease, and I don't like it. But the truth of the matter is, if that is what you have to cope with in order to have something this innovative, I'm perfectly fine with it here, even in second gen. So, love this phone. The 4,500 milliamp hour battery is actually quite serviceable. That was another issue I had with Gen 1, was that battery just could not get through a day. Now, I'm not saying this will get you through a day, but it will get you a lot closer. And then, of course, because it has 25 watt quick charge, which is nowhere near the fastest on the market, there's no real problem with the 4,500 milliamp. And I'm not excusing it, but it's also a marked improvement from Gen 1. So, really like this device. Speaker quality is solid with the stereo speakers being on the top and bottom of the left side. Flex mode, a good example. Really one of the best is when you're in the camera app. So essentially, as soon as you do that, you can see now we have the last shot, all of your camera controls, and then whatever you're framing on the top screen. Of course, if you change orientation, it will change the way flex mode works. And there's a shot of Barkley right there, which I will show you, which was shot on this phone. He was passed out, having a nice nap. And all I can say is, again, that the cameras are good. Are they amazing? No. You can see when I do a full crop like that, it becomes mush. But that's really the case with most flagship cameras these days, is that you're just not going to get that sort of performance. But, I've been using it a lot. Cameras are good. And like I said, from a selfie standpoint, the fact that you can now use these as your selfie cameras, because all you have to do is shoot like that, that is huge. And why they didn't think of that the first time around, I'm not really sure. I mean, this is what they do. This is their business. But we have it now. Now, another thing I want to address before I wrap things up with the update are the screen protectors. So the front screen protector, you can take off if you want. It's pre-installed. I'm not removing it. I'm waiting for my Whitestone Dome glass screen protector, which should be on the way shortly. The interior screen protector, though, Samsung has made abundantly clear you should not be removing that. They want you to actually bring this into a Samsung store to get it removed. Now, I personally will be leaving it in place. I don't think it's a big deal, but over time, there's no question, it's going to collect lint and stuff at the edges, and the fact that this is not dust-proof in any way, shape, or form, that is concerning. The way I clean this phone is the same as the way that I clean or cleaned the Z Flip on the regular, which was just with a Zeiss wipe, like I will show you right here. It's the same stuff I use on the glasses I wear on my face. It's the same stuff I use on cameras because it's non-abrasive. You can find them anywhere. They can go anywhere. So they are pre-moistened, but in my experience, no issue. Now, I'm not pushing this and people are going to go damage their phones. I mean, I've had absolutely no problems with the Z Flip, and I've had no problems giving this a wipe down as well. It's not going to really clean things as much as it's going to move them around, but it is absolutely better than any other solution that I could offer right now from my own experience. Another thing I'll tell you, with this leather case, I mentioned that it's better than nothing. I'm not in love with what you just saw there, which is, of course, because we only have screen protection on one side, it means if I use it while it's sitting on a table like this, it unfortunately is going to keep wobbling because there's nothing on the front end, on the front side. So it's very curious to me that Samsung just didn't make like a bumper here, so at least they would be the same thickness, same proportions, but it's not a big deal. And I'm looking forward to other cases. Again, this is just to have some form of protection and make the cameras flush so that when they are, when the phone is resting, they're not in jeopardy. But again, this is all about the hinge. This is all about the larger, higher refresh rate internal display, the larger display on the front of the phone, being able to use these cameras not just as what they were intended, but as selfie cameras, and just having a clean, more modern design than the first gen Fold, which is exactly what they've delivered. And it doesn't hurt that they've got 5G and the Snapdragon 865 complemented by 12 gigs of RAM. I just wish that internal storage would have been greater. And as I said, I kind of felt before we ever got any rumors that we were going to get the best cameras, just like the first gen, we were going to get the best of everything. Instead, They said, how can we make this device better without pushing it over $2,000? And I feel like that's what we got, which is a solid compromise. And from a value perspective, you can't call any device like this a value, obviously. You can buy a great computer for $2,000. You can buy a great camera, full frame camera for $2,000. But when you put it next to something like this that sells for $1,500 before tax, so a $500 difference, or $1,400 depending on capacity, I can tell you right now, this I can justify. This I cannot in a million years, because it's not just that the hardware in here is antiquated. Here you're getting so much more. I mean, 5 cameras, 1 camera, wireless charging, a battery that's 1,000 milliamp hours larger, obviously a year later gen processor, twice the amount of RAM in this phone. I mean, this is practically, just from a hardware perspective, in terms of what it costs to build, takes a complete crap on this toy from Microsoft. So while I have a lot of hope for 2nd Gen Duo, anyone who thinks that this device is a value and this device is overpriced needs to have their head examined. But that's it for today, folks. Again, an update on my experience with the Z Fold 2. Easily the best device of 2020. If there's one bright spot outside of like the storage, the NVMe drives I've been covering from Sabrent, it's that this is the coolest phone ever made, and also practical at the same time, which I don't think anybody expected from a foldable. Even though this one was pretty practical, I'm going to put it right there, it was pretty practical as well. I mean, the Z Fold, Z Flip, I really liked because of pocketability. And by the way, before I wrap it up, on the note of pocketability, I was a little bit worried about the Fold and my pockets, because this bruiser, the Note 20 Ultra, it's so big that it actually could fall. It was sticking out of a lot of my pockets. That's why when people say this is pocketable, I'm like, what kind of clown pants do you wear? But this was just too tall, too wide. And when I put them side by side, I realized that the Z Fold 2 is actually a little bit shorter. So even though it's thicker, by a good margin, it's actually more pocketable for me than the Note 20 Ultra. Go figure. It actually is. And that makes a really big difference, because I'm not worried about this thing falling out. This was always slipping. So just something for those of you that were curious about pocketability with this, fairly large $2,000 phone. And again, you're going to need something to deal with the all-glass slipperiness of the Z Fold 2. But that rounds things out. Any questions or comments, please feel free to post them. Hit that like button. And as usual, please feel free to subscribe. And please stay safe. Later.